News that works for you starts now.
An 88-year-old man targeted by a trio of thugs. They tied him up, ransacked his house, and took his money.
Now, that was last Thursday. Tonight, police were called to his home again after shots were fired.
The person who fired the gun, that same 88-year-old man. The target, a local TV news crew.
Fox News' Maurielle Lue and her photographer Joe Harris were just feet away from where it all happened.
We'll figure out what all is going on with all this.
This is not the outcome anyone wanted. An 88-year-old man tortured and beaten by a group of low-life punks just last week, now in handcuffs in the back of a Detroit police car, confused and disoriented, a victim for the second time. It started when I knocked on the door of his East Side home just after 6 Monday evening. The man, whose name we are not using, was attacked Thursday evening, lured to the door by a woman asking for help. When he opened the door, 2 men rushed in. He was beaten, tied up with a phone cord, and robbed.
I see 2 boys and a lady. It might have been more than that, but when tied me up, he wouldn't let me see nothing.
Did they hurt you?
Yeah, they hurt. Who wouldn't hurt? Took everything I had.
What did they take?
Take all my money. I had some old jewelry, took it. I had some shirt, clothes, took all of it.
The 88-year-old trusted me enough to tell me his story through the door, but he wouldn't open it. A lifelong Detroiter paralyzed in fear, now suspicious of everyone. So you're afraid to open the door for us?
Oh, I ain't gonna take no chance with you.
It seems like you're afraid of everyone.
Well, wouldn't you? Somebody beat you up and go kill you and got a gun in your head. Wouldn't you?
Despite the news van and my microphone, he was convinced I was not who I said I was and accused me of setting him up for another robbery. He was talking about the random people who stopped to take pictures of our news truck. Would you guys mind backing up just a little bit? Because you're making him a little nervous. I'm sorry. After the interview, he closed the door, but my crew returned to the scene just in time to witness Channel 7's crew running from his house. Then we heard a single gunshot.
It's a terrible situation. Could have been a lot worse. You were here. You heard the gunshot. It's scary, and you met him, right? Mm-hmm. So it's sad. It's a sad state of affairs when you attack a senior citizen. I don't care who you are. You don't attack a senior citizen, really. Police approached the house with guns drawn. The man screamed at officers who eventually coaxed him down and cuffed him. Disoriented from old age or perhaps the beating he received just last week, police say he denied having a gun, which police couldn't locate because of conditions inside his home. He was taken to Detroit Receiving Hospital for a medical evaluation and at last check was not under arrest. But this is not the ending anyone wanted. A man blessed to see 88, too scared to live at all. So now you're just going to stay in here?
Where can I go?
Not even come outside?
For what?
Fresh air?
And get killed? No, I ain't coming out there, but they won't get me no more.
And it's just a frightening story. With us now, reporter Maurielle Lue and photographer Joe Harris. And Maurielle, let's begin with you. A double tragedy for this elderly man.
Absolutely. Nobody wins in this, but I can say to be the one to have knocked on his door and had the chance to speak with him, we knew he was absolutely terrified. That was clear. And you just don't know what could have happened. For all we know, he had the gun with him at the time. And, you know, as part of our job to tell the people what's happening, police have not caught these 3 lowlifes who did this to this man and caused him to now live in fear. So we want to get the story out. And the way that we do that, again, telling stories, meeting people, and just trying to coax him out at any point, that could have been the trigger. Thankfully for us, it was not. But you could tell he was terrified.
Now, Joe, you didn't see him with the gun at the door.
No, but we had just came back to the scene and we saw, I played over in my head constantly. I saw the reporter run down the steps. Then we clearly heard the shot with the window still up. And then we saw the photographer run down behind him. And at that point, we knew we needed to check on them and get to them, but we couldn't go straight towards them because we would have had to pass the house as we saw them run across the street. So we had to go around the block the other way. And from the other side to see them behind the tree with the van between them and the house. And it wasn't until like later, because there were some trees around his house, the photographer Dave from Channel 7, he said that the guy was on the porch waving the gun for a while before he went back inside the house.
There was no way for them to safely get back to their vehicle and get out.
And you know, a professional reporter, I mean, you look professional, you sound professional, and yet when you went to his door, fear made him say, no, I will not let her in or you in, period.
And that's something that actually I'm so thankful to have been working with Joe on a day like today, because not all photographers get out of the car with you, walk you to the door. Joe and I are friends, and he does that anyway because that's the kind of guy that he is. But when I knocked on the door, Joe was standing outside, he was next to me, and the way that this man yelled, "Who is it?" I didn't even pick up on it, but Joe did. And he said at that point, "I didn't like that. You need to step back."
You knew immediately.
Yeah, it was after being, I was raised here, born and raised, and working in news for almost 15 years, you read situations, and that's always my fear. We never know what's on the other side of the door. We are approaching these people sometimes at their worst days. Sometimes police are still looking for some of the people we're coming to try to find, but this guy was a victim. You know, 4 days, he probably had not left the house in 4 days. He's been in fear for 4 days, and to have the police, then us, well, actually the robbers, then the police, then us, then another news crew knock on his door almost back to back over the course of 4 days. He'd never seen that much. So he had been in fear and not knowing, and you know, we play this over in our head constantly. You know, the news crews, we all run sometimes on the same stories. Had the roles been reversed on the timing, that could have been us as the second crew showing up, which, you know, plays over in our head that we were minutes from having a shot just, and when I tell you, the shot that was fired missed the reporter's head by no more than a foot, and that's giving it leeway.
Yeah.
Because we saw the bullet hole in the tree, and I think by him going down the steps and turning out of the gate, the way the property was set up, was the only reason why, fortunately, he's not dead right now.
Well, we understand that the reporter and the photographer from Channel 7 are okay tonight.
Right.
They were not hit. But it also speaks to the fear in that neighborhood. Now, describe that neighborhood. Is he the only person living on this block?
The neighborhood, there is no neighborhood. Not only is he the only person on the block, his is the only house on the block. There is nothing left. He's there alone. He has no neighbors. He has no one to call. In fact, this happened to him on Thursday. He could not even call police until Friday because his cell phone was taken. Thankfully, he had one more, but he had to wait for it to charge. The first person he called was a neighbor further down the street. That's the person who called police.
You also have to wonder about the man's family. I hope that he does have family. I hope that there's somebody he can rely on, because it's clear that maybe it is unsafe for him to live alone in that house.
Yes, and we know that police did reach out to his family when he was taken to the hospital. So we know that there's someone, but he does live in that house alone. We also want to mention police said he was out of it afterwards. When he said, "I didn't shoot," it did not come across to officers on the scene as a lie. He was in and out. He did not really understand what was going on. There could be some dementia at play here, which is why he went to the hospital as opposed to immediately being placed under arrest and taken to jail. But to see him in handcuffs after all he had been through, I cried. At the scene, I wept for him because you knew what this was. This is a man who is afraid of everyone. And even as he was being walked in handcuffs, Huel, to the police car, he looked at me and said, she tried to break into my house.
Because the woman
Right.
who came to his home with Thursday night was part of the same crew that robbed him.
Right. Yep.
And so he assumed that any woman who comes knocking on his door may be a part of a trio coming to rob him and beat him again.
And that's what he said to me at the scene. You see me, you see the news van, you see the microphone, and he said, it was a woman who came to my door on Thursday.
Yeah. But you can't help but think of your fathers and your mothers and your grandfathers in a situation like that. And you hope that he will get some help and hopefully not be charged. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, nobody was killed, and hopefully this elderly man will get the help he needs.
Yeah. And one more thing, I do want to say DPD they were excellent in how they treated him.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously for their own safety, they did have to place him in restraints to make sure that he didn't have anything because they didn't know what they were dealing with at the time. Once they got everything assessed, they did take him out of cuffs so that he was, more comfortable as they took him to the hospital.
Well, hopefully, somehow, some way, this story will have a better ending than what we saw tonight. Maurielle Lue, Joe Harris, we thank you.
Thank
Glad
you.
you're okay tonight. Sherry.